Good day, dear friends and colleagues. Let me introduce myself. I'm Vasu from the Raffles Group of Schools. I take immense pleasure to welcome Mr. Gary Tan, the director of the Raffles Group of Schools, which was started in July 2005 and was founded by the late Mr. William Suryajaya, a renowned entrepreneur in Indonesia and founder of the Astra Group, and Mr. Radius Prawiro, the former Minister of Finance of the Republic of Indonesia, in consultation with the Singapore Teachers Union. Today, the Raffles Group of Schools has a total of 5 campuses located throughout the city of Jakarta. It has grown from 136 students in 2007 and now has more than 2,000 students from preliminary to grade 12. So, today, Mr. Gary, we are going to discuss about the COVID-19, which has created the largest disruption of education systems in human history. So, the need of the hour is to innovate and implement alternative educational system and assessment strategies. So, how's the teaching and learning process during pandemic at the Raffles Group of Schools?
First and foremost, just let me thank you, Vasu, for the time, and parents and whoever's viewing this clip for this opportunity to kind of like feel some of the questions that have been raised by you. I think generally, the good thing about Raffles is that we have been making preparations, throughout our history, really getting ready and getting online with technology. So when the pandemic came very suddenly, we were able to pivot. We were able to kind of like put in place strategies that we have been talking about. For example, we have been running a framework, which is the Learning with ICT framework. And that's where teachers start to flip quite a portion of their classroom learning. About 30% of our classroom teaching was already technology driven.
Well, this is before the pandemic, Mr. Gary.
This was before the pandemic, yeah. So when the pandemic hit us, we were basically able to pivot around that and use a lot of these resources and techniques. So teachers were already going through training. They already had access to online learning resources. We had videos which we were using. And one of which is, of course, my second teacher, where children actually had access to the entire Cambridge syllabus in English, in physics, mathematics, and biology, right? And they were able to even continue learning in a period of pandemic. But having said that, it is still a challenge, right? From 30% to 100%.
That's true.
So I think that's where I think what happened was that a lot of our teachers do actually have to learn on the spot and innovate on the spot. And it wasn't easy, Vasu. It was something where I think teachers actually had to be very nimble on their feet, and they worked very, very hard. But I think also it's not just only the teachers. As a community, we all had to adapt. I think parents had to adapt to the fact that the children needed a learning device, because previously I think they were all used to maybe having one device shared by students, children across the family. But right now in the pandemic, every person needs their own device, even the parents. So I think that was also a period of change. For us, there was also the challenge of getting teachers on board, basically internet and so on and so forth. So making sure that teachers have actually good internet access from where they worked at home, right? So I think in the beginning, we started off by doing quite a lot of the learning process where teachers continue to report to school, and we leverage on the school's broadband. But subsequently, when the pandemic didn't get better and it got a little bit worse, then we allowed teachers to work from home, and we had to look at a lot of that infrastructure to support the teachers. But I think what was our critical success factor was the fact that we already had some of these things in place. We didn't wait for a crisis to start implementing this. And I think that then allowed our teachers to really not just think about delivering the lessons through technology, but how to look at it, how to deliver it creatively and innovatively. And I think it's important because, especially with the younger children, they need a lot of engagement, right? And I think really teachers were spending more time with that rather than spending more time worrying about whether what tools to use, what kind of software to use. I think those were the things that we kind of sorted out in the beginning. Yeah.
So, Mr. Gary, you have discussed about the teacher, your educator. So, what about the students, Mr. Gary? So, how do you support? How do you prepare and support your students to adapt to a new reality of remote learning?
Yeah. I mean, my opinion is, I think generally, I'm not saying that the remote learning is totally, how would I put it? It's not totally without challenges, yeah. But I think generally my sense is that students take to technology and this mode of learning more easily than adults. Yeah, and because the children grew up as a digital native, they were used to technology, they grew up with their handphones, they grew up with technology around them. So they're native to it, right? So they do take on to it a little bit better, right? But I think the challenge is trying to fit a traditional school system into a technology-driven system. Because, a child sitting in front of a device for like 8 hours is just way too much, right? And I think that that's where along the way the school had to make adjustments. We could not use an old model whereby the children were in school and a face-to-face for 8 hours to be replicated in the same way as as technology itself. So I think in that sense, we basically had to do some adjustments along the way. On top of that, we also built in a lot of other activities, meaning that we still kept a lot of our activities, such as we kept things like PE running. So teachers had to be
PE through online. Interesting, Mr. Gary.
Yes. It's physical education. So teachers were running, doing things like a lot more aerobics-driven kind of workouts, for the children and also for the teachers. So on top of that, we also had CCAs like, for example, gymnastics online, and I think it really brought out the creativity in the teachers as well. When they are faced with this, they actually chose to innovate rather than choose to give up. Right? I think that's important, or choose to do things in the same way. So I think that there were things that we tried to keep because we feel that it's healthy for the student in terms of student life. That's important that they continue to have such exposure to all these activities, such as PE, such as even fundraising. Children were involved in fundraising, and they were involved in fundraising for to help COVID victims. And we didn't want them to feel that they are victims of this COVID pandemic, but rather we were using this opportunity to teach things like tenacity. How do you rise above this difficult time? Yes, everybody is having a difficult time. Parents are having a difficult time. Teachers are having a difficult time. Students are also finding it difficult. But how do we rise above that? Right? And I think that's really a life lesson that you can teach during this difficult situation. So we put in place these activities, life lessons, and I think the other component that we also put a lot of effort in is really my character development team. Right? They put in a lot of effort during this time to help children diffuse the stress that they face, especially learning from home, to have parents beside them all the time. I think it's a new environment whereby parents, students spend a lot of time in a very closed environment. Right? So I think it's also a time where we help children to diffuse that kind of stress and also to cope with learning using a new method. So we actually had quite a lot of counseling sessions. In fact, my teachers were very proactive in identifying students who would actually need support and help. And we also do quite a lot of support and help for parents, through parent workshops, helping them understand the new normal in terms of the learning process.
That's true. Wow, very interesting preparation and support that you have given to your educators and students, Mr. Gary. So, as we can see, what do you consider as benefits and drawbacks of distance learning?
Yeah, I think the benefits would really be very much that learning becomes where space is no longer, time is no longer, space and time is no longer a constraint, right? And students can learn, across geographies. So one of the interesting things that we did was we brought together our best teachers to deliver lectures or classes across 3 campuses. So I think with technology, it allowed us to do that now. With technology, this period of time, what it has done is this remote learning model. It has also allowed us to basically do a lot of innovation on top of it, and to use quite a variety of technological skills, because now it's no longer an option, right? It's something that we need to do, in order to engage students in the learning process. So I think in terms of that is a plus, yeah. But technology has got 2 facets. The great teachers, if they use technology well, the impact is amplified, maybe 10 times, 100 times, right? But if you're a terrible teacher, it also shows your weaknesses 10 times, 100 times, So I think that is really for me, it's learning anytime, anywhere. You can learn at different paces, because then you have, for example, videos that you can basically watch and rewatch, and these are things that add value. The challenges or weaknesses of tech-based learning would be basically the human touch. I think there are certain things that we can do, and there are certain things that we cannot replace. And teaching is almost like a mentorship, right? It's not just merely a filling of knowledge and information, right? So technology does very well in terms of providing knowledge and information. But I think as children growing up, and with other things such as values being a very important part of the growth process, and also I think with character development, I think these are the human touch elements that a teacher plays a part. So for example, a child may learn a concept, but when the child runs into difficulties learning a concept, it's more effective when you are physically present to encourage the child. It's a little bit tough to do the encouragement via online structure, because it kind of like loses its personal, the kind of personal touch. So I think one of the things that technology cannot replace is personal touch. Yeah, it also cannot replace the fact that a lot of the relationship building and trust building, right? Because for any kind of relationship, for any kind of learning to take place, there must be the relationship between teacher and student. And a lot of that relationship is not built in jumping in and out of classes from class 1 to class 2 to class 3 to an online class. A lot of it is built in a day-to-day interaction. And I think technology can never fully replace that. So I think there's still a place for face-to-face. I think there's still a place for that human touch, because teaching and learning is about inspiring young people to be the best that they can be, right? And in inspiration and inspiring people and doesn't come purely with the use of technology. I think technology is best used for dissemination of information and knowledge.
So direct interaction is really, really essential, Mr.
Yes,
Gary.
it is.
Okay, so Mr. Gary, recently we heard from the MOE that they plan to reopen schools in July on conditions that parents approve, and the school management is also ready to start the offline classes. So what is your view on this?
Well, it's a carry on to the previous question just now, where I feel very strongly that the human touch and the human element is very important in education. So definitely I'm excited about school reopening, because I think it will bring in the school, the human touch element. And I think that it is a wonderful idea. I think it is something where we will have to do it in such a way that it is safe for all parties. Yeah, I think speed of opening is not such a critical factor. I think what's important is that schools have in place structures, SOPs, to ensure that we open safely.
So safety number one.
Safety is number one, yeah. I think any school that chooses to open quickly but don't have the safety worked out, yeah, I think is something that, it's not doing justice to the children and to the family and to the community as a whole. I think in terms of whether parents agree, I think that's where I think generally my sense of our schools is that we have two groups of parents. One group that strongly pushing for school reopening, and the other group that is quite concerned about whether the safety of the children are looked into. Yeah. And I think that at Raffles we are not looking at one or the other. We are looking at meeting the needs of both groups of parents. Right? So we want to basically ensure that if parents are not ready to send their children to school, it's okay, take your time, right? But yet at the same time, we will make avenues of learning available to these groups of parents. Right? It doesn't have to be one or the other. It is basically different strokes for different folks, right? So at the end of the day, I think we want to meet the needs of the community. For those that are ready to send their children to school, I want to assure the parents that we have actually put in place a series of different safety procedures, and we have been thinking about it as early as I think 3 months after the pandemic hit us, right? In fact, last year we were already prepared to open school in June, and we're thinking through all the processes. We have even looked at all the best case studies around the world. We have looked at even territories where schools have been open and did not have a serious outbreak, because they were able to open school in such a systematic and safe process, So I think the processes, like for example, we are well on our way to getting all our teachers and all the staff vaccinated, and I think that's the plan, both at the government level and also at the school level. So we are working towards that, and I'm very certain that by the new academic year we should get everybody vaccinated. So which means that school would in effect be a very safe environment, meaning that everybody in a school community, whether teaching staff, teachers, and everyone that actually basically is working within a school would be vaccinated and ready for school reopening. Right? So I want to assure parents that who are ready to send their children to school that Raffles would be a safe place, and we will basically control access to the school only to people who have been vaccinated, right? Except for children, right? Because children are below 18 years old. And I just want to add on to say that there are also some parents who are expecting their children to be vaccinated before school reopens. Yeah. And I've been very candid to many parents to say that, at the end of the day, that would be something that will likely happen maybe 2 to 3 years down the road, because at this moment, vaccines are basically targeted and have been tested on adults, and especially those that are above 18, right? And that has been the guidance by a lot of the health authorities, WHO, across the world as well. So, which also means that for a children version of the vaccine to be available, that would be like almost like we were expecting like maybe about 2 years down the road. And honestly, for children not to have a school community or environment to grow into, for 2 years is a very long time. I think already for this 1 year, we could see that students really crave that interaction, not just with an adult, but also with the other peers, right? They want to have that communication, they want to have that interaction, they want to have that how would I say, the deep interaction between each other, and I think it's impossible to wait for another 2 more years. I think what we need to do as a community is learn how to live with COVID. Right? And when I say live with COVID, it means that we need to take the necessary the safety procedures and precautions, but yet at the same time we need to take small steps to arrive at a steady state where children can have a mix of online learning plus also face-to-face learning, have both their human needs met as well as their intellectual needs met. Right? Not just only the head knowledge, but the heart, right? And also the spirit. Because we are not nurturing only excellent students, excellent thinkers. We also are nurturing students with heart and soul. Right? So the heart and the spirit are very important facets, and that's where we need a steady state. And we need to take small steps. We cannot expect that overnight there will be a child vaccine, a vaccine for children at this moment in time. So we need to be also, that will be a realistic way to look at things, and I think we need to take small steps towards it.
Okay, so from your message, I can safely say that Raffles is pretty much ready to reopen in July, Mr. Gary.
Yes, Vasu, I think we have been ready since last July. But nevertheless, I think, again, we are ready since last July, but we did not want to open schools because there was the safety element, right? And how do we look at safety elements? We look at infection rates.
Yes. So it's not about how quick to open the school.
Yes. It's about how safe, right, ultimately. And it's about ensuring that everybody, at least have taken, make sure that the environment is ready for school reopening. Right? And that includes environment that's not within our control, which is the infection rates in Jakarta. Right? Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Gary. So before we end our session today, do you have any message or any advice you want to share with our friends, colleagues, and parents?
I would say that it is a very difficult moment in time for all of us. Yeah. It is difficult for all parties. And I think fundamentally as a school community, it's important for us to acknowledge that it's challenging times for everybody, right? Not one person is having it better than the other at this moment in time. But I think what we can leave a legacy for our children is really helping them to overcome. I remember a story that one of the teachers was telling me the other day. So she was describing her rock climbing experience, whereby she went rock climbing and she was climbing, and at each step when she looked down she was so afraid, but at the end of doing it the first time, and she came down from the rock climbing wall, the second time going up was a lot easier, right? So I think the same with our children, because this is not going to be the last pandemic. Right? I think throughout human history, we have had multiple pandemics. And I think that helping our children have that tenacity and mindset to be able to overcome would be really key. And let's use this situation as a great opportunity and what educators would call teachable moments, right? Moments that young children can learn things, because we may forget content in books, but I think ultimately we want to leave children with important life lessons that they can carry beyond even us as adults, that hopefully when they become parents, they will be able to impart these values, they will be able to impart this kind of strong tenacity to be able to overcome through difficult situations to their children as well. So I look forward to seeing all of us in school. I don't think that it will be a full face-to-face, but I'm looking forward. I'm looking forward to a partial reopening and to basically starting the face-to-face component with all our students and parents, as well as also our teachers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gary, for your inspiration and enlightening us about the teaching and learning process at the Raffles Group of Schools. We do hope that Raffles can reopen soon. And on the same note, we also hope that teachers and learners will continue using online tools to enhance teaching and learning. Thank you very much.
Thank you.